In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
What happens when a privileged life built on international corporate success suddenly implodes? Dana Garnett is our guest this week on Money Tales. Dana discovered the high cost of poor communication during conflict when she and her ex-husband burned through $270,000 in legal fees to get through their divorce. That was equivalent to the money they had saved for their daughters' college educations. But Dana's story doesn't end there. As a former Coca-Cola executive turned mediator, she transformed her painful divorce experience into a mission to help others navigate life's most challenging conversations with greater ease. Her story reveals powerful insights about how we can preserve not just our financial wealth, but our health and our relationships during times of crisis. Let me tell you more about Dana. As founder of the Mindful Strategy, Dana works as a mediator and conflict resolution strategist, helping individuals resolve conflict that is preventing them from successfully living and running their personal and professional life. Examples include clashes over business strategy or operating values, C-suite or team confrontations, succession rivalries, generational and family fallouts, divorce, and disputes over trusts and estates. Dana is also a national speaker and certified trainer.
Here are 3 key money topics Dana hits on in this episode. First, the neuroscience of money conversations. Approaching financial discussions with curiosity instead of judgment literally reduces stress hormones and improves outcomes. Second, the hidden cost of avoiding financial transparency. Pretending everything is quote-unquote fine during financial stress creates more anxiety for everyone involved. And third, how fear of legal costs can cost you more. If you need professional advice, get it. Chances are avoiding the cost now will lead to much greater expenses down the road. It's now our pleasure to bring you Dana Garnett's Money Tales.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager. Cami, I am excited. I'm getting ready for a meeting with clients that are getting married.
That's fun.
I've been working with this family for as long as I've been at the firm, so a very long time. This is the 3rd generation of the family that I'm working with now, and a marriage is coming up, and we're going to be talking about prenuptial agreements or premarital agreements. You can call them either, with the couple to be married. It's going to be an educational meeting, but before we get into the education, we're going to level set and ask them about how they have been cohabitating, how they've been talking about money, what comes up for them, and really easing them into this conversation because we really aren't quite sure where they're at in those conversations at this point in time. And we want to make sure that we level set before we jump into the nitty-gritty of premarital agreements, which can get pretty technical.
What a beautiful way to do it, too, to warm up the conversation, to connect with them on their values and maybe even ask questions they've never asked each other.
I hope so. We know a lot about the partner who is related to the family we've been working with for all these decades. Their fiance is someone brand new to us. So this will be the very first meeting with them. That's also really important and special because we want to make sure that that person feels welcome and included and comfortable and knows that they're in a safe space. And we are here to provide support and education to help them reach a decision that makes sense for both of their needs. And that may include a premarital agreement, and it might not. Those agreements aren't right for every couple.
What an incredible next money conversation you're going to have. It's so wonderful.
I love my career. It's filled with so much fun. I get to have the best money conversations.
Well, speaking of, let's turn our conversation to our guest today, Dana Garnett. It is fantastic to be talking with you on the Money Tales podcast.
Welcome, Dana.
Thank you, Cammie. Thank you, Sandy. I don't know if you could see I was bobbing and nodding as you were having this conversation about prenups, because, oh boy, is that something I wish people would have more and more conversations about. I've mediated divorce cases and civil cases, business breakups, as well as marriage breakups for almost 10 years now. I get a lot of questions about prenups, a lot of times in hindsight. I was actually speaking to a graduate MBA class recently. The class was called Managing Family-Owned and Closely Held Businesses. Someone raised the question about prenups. And this is after I'd been talking about how we communicate with each other is so critically important to not avoiding conflict, because yes, I'm in the business of conflict resolution, but avoiding unnecessary conflict, unnecessary loss of time, money, health, relationships. That could be avoided if we just knew how to communicate more effectively. And when it comes to prenups, the question was, should I have one? And my answer was, if you actually have the right conversation around it and you have a prenup and it's been designed in an effective way where you both, through the process, you've come to know each other on a deeper, greater level, chances are if you sign it, you'll never need it.
That is so true. The magic is in those pre-conversations. Let's vision our life together. How do we want it to work? Who's going to do what?
If you have just a document and you haven't gone through it in such a way, it's going to make things tense, and maybe just even have that under the radar worry all along, or resentment. Why you even asked me to sign this? Of course, there's always the case that if you signed it and nobody's really comfortable with it, you may need it. And even then people may challenge it because, well, I didn't really want to sign this in the first place. Those things come up. Or if you don't have it at all and you don't know each other that well, you haven't had those conversations, you may wish you had. It just comes down to, let's talk about money, particularly. Marriage is about love. Divorce is about money. It's a property contract at the end of the day.
And what better way to learn to have money conversations than at the beginning of the path to marriage?
Yes. You just hit a nerve.
Well, Dana, I feel like I know you a little bit, but would you introduce yourself and share a couple pivotal moments that really influenced who you are today?
I have been a mediator for 10 years now. And before that, I was in the corporate world with the Coca-Cola company. Before that, Big 8 public accounting, CPA, auditor. I took a hiatus from my Coca-Cola career. I was living internationally initially. I met my husband working and traveling. We were both internal auditors at the time, living out of a suitcase around the world. Then we took full-time assignments with the company in different places. My first appointment, his and I, were in Lagos, Nigeria, for example, and then Brussels, Belgium, where we ended up getting married and we had our children. And at that point, our twins were 3, and I decided we have the privileged life. I could afford to become the trailing expatriate spouse, as they call us. I ended up going back to my first love, which is the performing arts, running a performing arts studio. And our daughters grew up in this, and eventually they ended up studying theater and all that. But along the way, we were living in Thailand by this time. And our 20-year marriage was not a happy one necessarily, but we made it work. Probably because we just didn't see each other a lot because he traveled a lot. That said, we went through a really bad divorce. And talk about your money conversations. I felt like my world suddenly imploded, and all of the privilege and the comfort that I had was suddenly in jeopardy. Everything worked out in the end. However, because we were so embittered with each other, we blew through $270,000 in legal fees to get our divorce, and then another $30,000 in therapy just for me and my daughters, had we both known better how to get through this. But that experience put me on a path of becoming a mediator, because I often say there's no handbook on marriage, nor is there a handbook on divorce. When I decided I want to help people not fall into the traps that I had come into on this path to divorce or through it, and I became a mediator. On that path, I studied the neuroscience of conflict and did this deep dive in how we're physiologically wired. And anyway, long story short, I looked back, and all the time I thought I was a victim of a bad marriage, bad divorce. I actually had been contributing to my own misery in a lot of ways. I just didn't know it. There's a great Maya Angelou quote. We all do the best we can with what we know at the time. If we knew better, we'd do better. So I found myself at a fork in the road. I could keep spinning in all the resentment and the not getting over the divorce, or shift. And when I made that shift, and at the time, the father of my children and I were not talking, but we had to converse about college and things like that. I started showing up in a different way, which really helped ease the tensions pretty quickly. And which kind of surprised me.
How did you show up?
In short, I showed up without judgment, with curiosity, checking in with how is he doing before we start the conversation about college funding? What's going on with him? Having just an open conversation, but not about making it about me first or me putting out what's important about me. It was not easy at first. When I realized, wow, and my daughters are sitting on either side of me on this call too, praying that their father and their mother don't blow up again. I learned how to communicate from a place of curiosity without judgment. And the neuroscience piece of this is it lowers our cortisol, not just ours, but the other person's too. Even difficult conversations can be had from a neutralized place. When that shift happened for me, it was 18 months after the decree was filed. If I'd known this skill sooner, it would have been maybe a couple of months. I could have really gotten over it. I talk about the divorce continuum. You're either just getting on it, you're just facing it, you're embroiled in the middle of it, or it's legally over, but you're not over it.
It's a really big transition. It can take years to get over that.
Absolutely. When I figured out how to get over it, I started in my mediation work. I was still mediating cases, court-ordered cases, but I started coaching in conflict resolution to get real resolution, because mediation is great, but it gets you settlement when you've gone through a divorce, for example, or even a business breakup. When you have settlement, people still tend to walk away not that happy, or they didn't get what they wanted exactly. And that resentment, if we don't know how to clear that and move on, that can stay with you. Whenever we're stressed or we're holding on to something and it's under the radar, we're doing great until it triggers us again and it all comes up again. That's basically a state of dis-ease. It's the opposite of ease. When you take out that hyphen, and you've got disease. If you have years, which some people do this, they experience years of resentment, it can physically make you sick, which is another form of loss from conflict. I have a real passion around helping people to manage life's challenges with greater ease, because it's not going to get easier. There's never a time where everything's okay. There's nothing to worry about. But if you know how to dance with it, you can live a longer, happier life and preserve the wealth of your money, your health, your relationships along the way.
Tell us about your comfort level talking about money well before the divorce happened. Take us back to like your childhood. What was going on with you around money all the way up to that moment where you and your husband decided that it was time to call the marriage off?
My parents were very open about money, but there were times when money was tight, there was worry. My sister and I, in some ways, absorbed the worry, but I call myself the ultimate optimist. I just went the other direction rather than be worried about it. I figured everything's always going to work out somehow, because it did. There'd be this worry, but the catastrophe never happened. Let's quote Maya Angelou. Everyone's doing the best they can with what they know. I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, my parents or whatever. But I would say my grandfather, he instilled with me an appreciation for money. My parents also had a lot of good respect for money, but he invested himself in the stock market. When I worked for the Coca-Cola company, he'd always send me clippings wherever I was in the world of an article he saw in the Wall Street Journal or something about Coca-Cola, when he followed the Coke stock and all this. But growing up, I decided to not worry about money. When we got married, we were very well off.
We had expat packages when you were sent off to different countries.
Yep, full-blown expat package, everything. We were 22 years abroad before we divorced. So it was a long time. People would say, when we're family and we're treating or something, they say, no problem, we can do that, no problem, no problem. Well, when the divorce hit, this is how we have to be very cautious about how innocent bystanders get impacted by how we talk about money. Our daughters, when the divorce happened, I was, of course, worried about my financial future. And in the end, settlement was fair and all that. But I was still kind of doing this with my girls. Mom, how much is that going to cost? Oh, it'll be fine. Even when things may have been tight for me for a while.
You didn't want them to worry?
Yeah, I was just, it's good, it's good. Even if I was worried, but I just was playing it off. It's good, it's good. And their dad would do that too, innocently. Neither of us knew that this was having an impact on our girls. And one day, my daughter says, Mom, please stop doing that. What? Oh, just pretending it's okay. Because we know you're probably worried. It doesn't make us feel any more comfortable. In fact, it makes us feel more stressed when you just kind of blow past it.
Wow. She's incredible. She's right. You weren't talking about it.
How old was she at the time?
They're 26 now,
And at the time,
14, 15.
so what did it feel like to hear that wisdom coming from your daughter's mouth?
Dagger in the heart. Oh God, what have I been role modeling? So what happened from there? One of my girls is currently living in London, one's in Austin. I went to go see my daughter in London for some time earlier this year. And we had a Zoom call and I said, okay, girls, it's time to talk about money situation. We hadn't actually had a good conversation in a while. I shared with them, I just want to let you know where things stand with me. And I was getting some health checkups, just regular stuff. And I just want to tell you, this is how I'm doing. This is where the money is. This is what it is. Your beneficiary, just a reminder, because they're 26 now. I mean, we'd have these conversations, but they're young adults now. And I always like to follow up with, has this been helpful? Is there anything else you want to know? And they had a few more questions. You could just feel the relief, like, okay, they know. And I put it in the context. I have no indication of anything happening to me right now, but should I not be here tomorrow? I just want you to know where everything is and what would happen and all that. And having that conversation just helped them give some ease around that.
That's such a relief. And I'm curious, do your daughters have their own and different relationship with money?
They both have a healthy relationship with money. And when we were in that privileged place, this is back in Thailand, I started giving them an allowance. And we had helped someone with a house and drivers, and it was very privileged. But when we go home to the States to visit family, I gave them an allowance and went to the Disney store because that's what they wanted to do then. They saved up their allowance and we went shopping for a toy. And they looked at several things. Oh, I want to get this, and I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get this. And they said, how much is that, Mommy? And I said, well, let's add it up. How much money do you have? And this was like 6 years of age. They discovered the money they were holding in their hands wasn't enough to accept buy one of those.
And Disney stuff's expensive.
Is it going to be a doll? Is it going to be the CD player? Or is it going to be some kind of vehicle for some? Yeah. Anyway, they said, oh, we don't have enough for everything. And I said, oh, you don't? Okay, well, which do you think that you really want? And they're talking to each other now. And of course, they're twins and they share things amongst themselves. They still have their own things, but they would share. So they start looking at, well, you could get that and I could get that. But then they also said, we already have a CD player thing. We have so many dolls when it's another doll, but we don't have anything like this.
Seeing what they really value.
Exactly. To this day, when they are making their own money decisions, they're able to weigh up the value of money. My grandfather instilled that in me. Working for corporate America instills this in you, the value of money. Their dad and I instilled that in them. What's the value of money? And he's been a great coach in that regard too, teaching about the value of money. And they have always kind of grown up with that. If anything helps make up for some of the stress I put them under at times, but I've always been grateful that they spoke up because I was at a time I didn't see it.
It's a sign of very healthy, productive money conversations.
Thank you. I must say there's some vulnerability in it because, especially when it comes to our children, sometimes I think, oh, decisions I made at a time when I didn't know.
Just like you said earlier, Dana, in that moment, we're doing our best. With reflection, we see so much more, especially as we've gotten more training and more experience. I do want to just dwell on the divorce for a little bit longer because you mentioned the very steep legal bills that you and your ex were paying as you were going through this process, which I know from the work that I do is very common. And that can be unnerving. As those bills were coming in, can you share with us what was happening for you as you were managing through it? Because you said that you were really putting yourself in the victim seat at that point. And I'm wondering how the money aspect played into your outlook.
You pay the retainer and then they go through those retainers pretty quickly. I just remember the lowest point was wondering, when is this going to end? There's a finite resource that we can go through before we're done. We had saved. Interestingly, the amount we spent on legal fees came pretty close to what we had been saving up for the girls' college. I started looking at it like, what's happening here? At the time, I couldn't see, why is he doing this to me? But I never thought to ask myself, why am I doing this to him? Or why am I doing this to them, our daughters? It got to a point where I didn't understand how to talk to my attorney. I was very emotional a lot. I was resentful of the amount of money it was costing legally. This is so important. If you're going through anything, we need legal advice. Don't avoid getting legal advice because you're afraid of what it's going to cost. Whatever it is, you need that legal advice because this is what I've seen as a mediator. I've lived this. That's why I think it's so important to share. When we don't have clarity around our legal or our financial options, and this goes to heeding the advice of your financial advisor, heeding the advice of your lawyer, your CPA, whomever. When we don't have that clarity around our legal or our financial options, we're emotionally stuck and we freeze, or we make decisions from a place of misalignment because we're just fearful and we decide not to do something because we're so afraid of what it might cost, but we don't understand the greater cost. I actually do mediation coaching. I may not be the mediator, but I'm coaching someone in their mediation or gearing up for it because how we communicate with your to-be ex or your attorney who's trying to help you can save you time and money and stress, but you need that advice. Once you get the clarity, you are able now to make legal and financial decisions significant to your future without regret. You're grounded, you know why you're doing this, you've gotten clarity on it because you've cleared a lot of the issues that keep triggering you. Sadly, I didn't have this knowledge going through my situation, but I've been able to help people beyond then to actually work through things that get the attorney that they need.
You probably are having money conversations because you talked about there's a reluctance to spend the money. You'd throw out some scary numbers, but then there's an aspect that's priceless. How do you coach someone who's reluctant to get comfortable around investing in a legal professional and other resources?
I can share a story quickly around that. A client came to me. The family had incurred $100,000 in that divorce. The other daughter is now wanting to get a divorce. The whole family's afraid to engage.
Once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah, we don't want it to cost $100,000. They'd heard about me, and I said, it doesn't need to cost $100,000 if you are clear on what you're needing, et cetera. And I helped her to find an attorney that was supportive in having me work alongside her. I explained to the attorney, I'm a mediator by profession. I'm working as a conflict coach in this regard, but I'm here to help her stay emotionally aligned as she goes through the process. But I know she needs legal advice. She's on the phone hearing all this too. And they said, that's great. That's absolutely fine. And that's big. You work as a team.
Someone to lean on.
Exactly.
Dana, what I find particularly remarkable about the story that you've shared with us is how, with some training, you were able to change your mindset on your own. In my experience, it's very difficult for people to do that by themselves. Having someone like you in the room to help change and direct mindset is so helpful. How did you muster that will within you to do that?
I talked about that crossroads when I learned about when we're physiologically stressed and can't let go of it, it impacts our health. I was always very healthy, but I was losing sleep. I was not keeping up. I was just really drained. I really began to appreciate that an investment in my own self-care by going a different path was not only good for me, but anybody around me. If I'm not taking care of me, then I'm not as good as I can be for my daughters or for whomever's relying on me, my clients. In fact, when we lived in Thailand, I had studied mindfulness, but I didn't have any clue it was going to become a part of the work I do. My business is the mindful strategy. I took the mindfulness teachings I learned from Thailand, from Eastern philosophical teachers, and the strategy from the corporate world and all that, and merged the two. I actually started living something, an expression the Thais use, which is Mai Pin Rai. Mai Pin Rai means you can't change the past and you cannot control the future. So what you have is the present moment. And if you're aligned in the present moment, you're going to impact your future more positively. Getting present and appreciating that being overly stressed for no reason was not healthy. was the first shift for me. And then when I began to apply the conversation piece of it, understand how to construct a conversation, a very specific word choice in a very specific order that can shift the dynamics. And I started seeing that I was able to do that myself in lots of different situations. And then I could start teaching people how to do that. When we start to come at things differently again, that people actually feel heard and understood, wow, that's a game changer right there. Now you can start influencing because you have an up-leveled skill on how to do it. I just find it fascinating because it doesn't matter political, religious, gender, race, age, whatever the differences are that might create conflict, there's a way to cut through it. Conflict is not about personality. We are all humanly wired the same. Our amygdalas fire up and they lower the same way. And we just have to understand how to connect or how to diffuse quickly. How does it not become unnecessary blow up of conflict?
So do you think what you learned about curiosity and coming in without judgment, is that the core of it?
Yes, it is. Not just for other people, but for yourself too. What is it that I need in this moment? And not judge yourself. It's so easy in our society. Well, jokingly, I'm so horrible at this. Or, oh God, there I go again. Well, every time we diss ourselves, it's a form of cortisol. It's a form of inner conflict. Curiosity and judgment, particularly with other people, but also within ourselves.
I really appreciate you saying that within ourselves as well. A lot of times we think we have to bring it externally, but it starts internally. And I really appreciate around money, how this is so important, and asking of yourself and being curious and not having that judgment.
Dana, what's your next money conversation going to be and who's it going to be with?
I've just recently realized there's some things with respect to my mom's estate that we as a family, but I have not updated with titles to properties and things like that. I was recently reminded that you need to do that, or you're going to spend more money legally, or it's going to risk holding things up with respect to that, taking a fresh look at where we are with her estate and her finances and making sure that everything's in order. It brings peace of mind.
For sure, for everyone.
Absolutely.
Really important. Would you share with our listeners where's the best place for them to find you?
There is my website, mindfulstrategy.com. I also am on LinkedIn. Please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn and connect. Send me a message.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on Money Tales. It's been an incredible conversation.
Thank you both. It's been a pleasure as well.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening, and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspiriant. Go to aspiriant.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspiriant.com. See you next time.